And welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard D. the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Hi.
It is Monday, January 16th, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. New video posted soon. I'm doing a contrast comparison of the Half-Life 2 VR mod and Half-Life Alyx. Because I've always thought Half-Life Alyx was a tad overrated in some ways. I think.
Oh yeah, because you compared it to Boneworks a lot, like because
the week it came out, I remember seeing a Reddit post of somebody turning the dials on one of the radios in the starting area of Half-Life Alyx, and people were like, "Holy shit!" and you can do everything, and people were like putting things in baskets and carrying the basket around. It's like, Jesus Christ, and it's like, okay, well.
Problem one, you're on Reddit.
I know. And I know it's slightly pretentious, but it's like we're focusing on the wrong things about what is good about Alyx, because physics, there are other VR games with crazy physics, but they're just not called Half-Life. So they didn't get, but like the physics aren't the thing. Anyway, that's not here nor there. I'm making a video about that, and it should be done sometime soon. We do have a ton of news. I played some games. I watched a TV show. I want to talk about the first episode of The Last of Us show.
Oh, okay.
Because it aired last night. Did you guys...
I lived it.
You lived The Last of Us?
Yeah, I don't need to watch it.
Oh. Is lived it a synonym for played it?
Played the game twice, yes. I've seen side by sides. It's very good.
It's very
good.
close. You know what? I'll start.
Okay.
Because my initial reaction to the Last of Us show was annoyance, because I don't know how difficult it is to make a show, but I watched it and it was fine. The first episode was totally fine, and there was a lot of dialogue taken straight from the games. There was a lot of camera angles taken straight from the games. And then I thought about, the Halo show and a butt-naked Master Chief, and I thought about the line Zootopia porn from running the Resident Evil TV, and I was just like, is it that difficult to make a TV show or a movie about a video game? Because it just sometimes it feels like it's not, and I know that's coming from a place of somebody who has zero experience making a TV show, but like so much is already there's so much source material there, and when you see The Last of Us, the first episode, it's only the first episode, I know. But the first episode's really solid, and it hits a lot of the same story beats from the first hour of the first game. It's not, it doesn't take a genius to take the first hour of The Last of Us and then stretch some of those character moments out so you get a little more of characterization. And I know Neil Druckmann is working on the show. He was the director of both games, so that probably helps out a lot as well. And I think it comes down to... I just don't think people play video games, Like if you played the Uncharted...
I would disagree.
If you played Uncharted, Mark Wahlberg is like a joke cast for Sully,
Yeah,
And
sure.
Mark Wahlberg's a fine actor, except in The Happening. Other than that, he's a fine actor. But Mark Wahlberg is one of those picks on like a joke casting, or like Steve Buscemi as... as Obi-Wan Kenobi or something like that, where you pick an obviously horrible cast, like Mark Wahlberg as Sully is like the opposite of what you would pick. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, that casting is done because some executive knows Mark Wahlberg sells movies and they've never played a video game in their life.
Bruce Campbell would have been a good Sully.
Bruce Campbell would have been an incredible Sully. Basically anybody else with a mustache would have been a better Sully.
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott could have been
what's his name was in the fan film? The dude from Avatar, the Colonel.
Oh
from
yeah,
Avatar. He was in the fan
and Nathan
film.
Fillion was basically Nathan Drake. Let's be honest here. But anyway, so when I watch The Last of Us show, it's just like, okay, this, like, again, it's difficult to make a show. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know what goes into it, but at the same time, it's really easy to imagine them sitting down and storyboarding out the first episode, and it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty straightforward. But the first episode was pretty good. They extended... Sarah is Joel's daughter, who appears in the game briefly. They extended her story a little bit more.
I'm kidding.
Extended her story. They changed up some things.
Yeah.
And I think it's things that make sense. like in The Last of Us, I don't think it's ever hinted at that the infected people like eat. I think they just beat the shit out of you. They're just violent. They just turn you angry.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's ever like a zombie thing where they eat other people.
Mm-hmm.
But in the game or in the show, you actually see like the way that infected people infect other people is by like biting into their necks, and then they have like these tendrils coming out of their mouths. And I was fine with a little change because that in the game you have to be able to fight them. So you make them violent, you make them like aggressive and stuff like that. You turn them into video game enemies. In the show, it's not going to be 15 hours of Pedro Pascal, fighting and sneaking past bad guys. So you have to give them some kind of like other menacing thing to do. And I think that's a totally fine change. It's not egregious. Like the changes are all changes that make sense. And I won't go change by change. Pedro Pascal, and as soon as they said he was going to play Joel, I was like, that's a great goddamn pick. And oh my God.
Yeah, he's good.
He's good.
He's good in all the clips I've seen. He's great.
He sort of matches the world weariness, the show gives you hints because Joel is not a good person. Joel's just a survivor, right? And early on in Last of Us, I don't think you understand that early on in the game.
No, you don't.
You see what happens to him. You see what happens to his daughter. You cut 20 years in the future. It's him and Tess in Boston, and they're smuggling and stuff. He's kind of in the work that he does smuggling is seedy and maybe kind of wrong, maybe kind of scandalous or whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't really get a hint that how violent he is until you get later on into the game where it more establishes his character. That is established much quicker in the TV show, which is just an interesting sort of different way of establishing his character. And again, that's something that it's not a major change. It's not, showing the Master Chief's face. It's not this huge paradigm shift away from the entire point of a character's being, If Joel came out and Joel was a Han Solo type character, then it's like, okay, then you're just writing fan fiction at this point. But that's obviously not. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where the show goes from here. And hopefully if it's successful, maybe you'll see better adaptations and stuff like that, because there is no reason a Halo TV show should be as bad. I didn't watch any of it. I didn't need to. It was just like, why is the Master Chief naked? What's the point of all this? Why is his helmet off?
Hey, he was naked in Halo 4, okay? At the end. Right?
And that was another mistake by 343.
Halo 4, yeah.
No.
I hear his suit takes care of him in the TV show.
Yeah.
Sexually.
But like, it shouldn't be that. I don't know.
That's not a joke.
There's wait, is it really not?
No, it's not a joke.
Okay. Anyway, so you need to hire people that have played the games. Do that. And when I say play the games, I mean not like I'm going to be gatekeeper pretentious here. Not like sat down and watched. I mean played the game.
Yeah.
Like understood that the battle rifle was the best option in the game for medium to long range firefights. Know what BXR is.
When you do that, then you get into the conflict of
somebody doing a shot for shot remake.
No, you get into the conflict of what the producers want and what is wanted.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get Henry Cavill leaving The Witcher.
Yeah, and of course, the problem there is producers are morons most of the time.
Well, and Hollywood is nepotism land.
Yeah,
and everybody wants to help their friends out. And that was something that somebody was saying that they're in the industry, and usually a lot of these adaptations are given to no-name lower writers who want to make their own thing, but they just choose something that's close enough, and it's just like, here, like you can screw with this.
Yeah.
And that causes very bad things to happen, of course.
Yeah. Because you don't.
But but this one, of course, I mean, thankfully, I don't know who did. I don't know if it's HBO that was like that brought Neil Druckmann on to be the showrunner, but obviously that was a great choice. So he also directed a couple episodes too. So
yeah, and I don't know, the rest of the season could totally take a dive, but they nailed so much about about the game in the first episode that that's hard to imagine.
From what I heard, they gave most of the reviewers the entire season. So all the reviews that are out right now
that doesn't always happen.
Yeah. So that tells people two things. They're very confident in it, and then secondly, a lot of the reviewers have already seen it. And
it's not like a high concept idea. I mean, the character interactions I think are complicated because you're dealing with deeply troubled characters. But like it's not like you have to establish. It's not like Lord of the Rings where you have to establish elves and orcs and rings of power and gods and all that shit. Right? It's much more simple. It's essentially a zombie apocalypse. Take Ellie West, survive. And it's a battle of losing one's own humanity, blah, 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 blah. It's like it's not a high concept idea, right? Pretty straightforward. So I think from that you can, and maybe that's easier to make an adaptation out of than something like Metal Gear Solid, where the concept is just all over the place. It's just a madman who every other second changes what theme he wants his game to be about. And somehow it comes out coherent at the end. And that's different. So I need to get that all off my chest because I saw just the first episode. It was like, oh, look how simple that was. Look how straightforward that was. They didn't do anything crazy. And there were a few additions that were really, really creepy. Do you guys care about small spoilers?
No.
There's one addition. There's one thing I didn't like about the show was at the very beginning is set in the 60s and it's a TV show. And it's a scientist who studies fungi. I don't remember what that's called. Specifically fungi. Anyway.
Cordyceps?
Yeah, it's like a scientist. Like an immunologist or whatever studies viruses.
Yeah.
It's a scientist that specifically studies fungi. And they explain how
Mycologist.
A mycologist?
Mycologist.
Okay. It's a mycologist on a TV show, and they're talking about, like, deadly viruses, and the mycologist is like, well, I would propose fungi. And he's explaining it sets up what the apocalypse is, right? And I would have preferred that it just allowed the audience to sort of figure it out, because that's what the games did. The games didn't tell you, like, what the infection was. It was telegraphed, but like you kind of figured it out as the game went on.
Yeah.
But this one sort of delivers it right off the bat, so you know, oh, it's fungus zombies, okay, like right as you go. The other thing that I really, really liked, was a scene with Sarah, and it's before everything goes down, and Sarah is in her neighbor's house. She goes over to her neighbor's house after school to do something, and she's in her neighbor's living room, and their neighbors are an old couple who still have a mother that lives with them, and the mother's really old, like in 90s, and she's in a wheelchair and she can't talk. They have to like care for her, and she's out of focus in the background, and it's showing. So Sarah's face is in the shot, and she's like looking at a bookshelf, and in the background you can see the really old lady in a wheelchair. The old lady looks up for a second, and you can tell she's out of focus the whole time. You can see her eyes and her mouth get really, really wide. And like that's the moment that whatever level of fungus was spreading was able to infect her. And that's really creepy because she it looks like she's being strangled, but it's completely quiet. And then Sarah walks out of the room and you cut away. And I thought, oh, that's a really neat, like super creepy little that fits, all that.
Yeah.
You were going to say something? I'm sorry.
So I don't, I do want to like watch it. I'm not going to like watch the whole thing, but I am curious to check it out. But once again, they re-released this game 3 times now, and I played it and it's wonderful and whatnot. But yeah, so the show is designed for people who don't play the games, and that's the first thing. The second thing is people are stupid. So you have to like,
how do you mean? Oh, are you talking about?
I'm talking about your first point with like introducing like. And so yes, we know like people play the game, but my mom doesn't.
Sure,
it's like that helps her. So I mean, it helps.
But I think like even like the show's intro is the same intro as the game's intro, where it's the dun 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 that guitar, and it shows like
What's
like
happening.
fungal spores. As the credits are like scrolling, it's fungal spores.
If they had that, then yeah, that's
and that kind of like that. Oh, that's fungus.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think you can connect. That must be. You don't need the scientist. It's a creepy scene because it's like this guy guessed it in the '60s, kind of a thing. But I always liked in the game
redundant.
I always liked in the game that you eventually find like a newspaper talking about the fungus that infects ants. And you're like, holy shit, that's what this is. Like you have that you suspect what's going on, and then you get the connection to the real world, and that's like a little creepy moment in the game. They move that they like front loaded that. Creative decision is fine. I just would have preferred it the other way, where it allows the audience to sort of put it together. But maybe they thought right off the bat, if it seemed like just another standard zombie show, it would turn people off. So they wanted to like differentiate it. I don't know. Yeah.
There was a tweet that I saw that was about the Last of Us show, and it's the Last of Us is aiming to break the infamous video game curse for adaptations, and it's like we've had several video game adaptations in the past 5 years that have been really good. This is groundbreaking stuff they're doing because like Arcane, really good. It was adaptation of League of Legends.
Yes.
Oh well, yeah, but no, people don't count anime and stuff like that.
Well, then you had
because Castlevania was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
Pikachu.
I'm not
Sonic
sure
the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat. Street Fighter. Oh, actually, no, not the animated movie. Several of them.
Because I'm not sure how far. But you liked Castlevania, right? I'm not sure how far Castlevania like strayed away from the story.
Don't get me. It to me it didn't, because there was no story. Yes, it captured the spirit. Yeah, there was no story based. Whatever game they based it off of, there was no story. It was like these three get together to go fight Dracula. In between, there's no story, so they made up their own story.
Yeah,
so I'm like, this is great, but everybody's like, that's not the story. It's like, well, there's no story in the video game. Whatever.
But when it comes to Castlevania opinions, Richard is somebody that I hold to high esteem. Yeah. So
thank you.
But I think that's kind of I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's a dumb take about the
absolutely
the quote video game curse for adaptations. It's like there's no curse.
There hasn't been in a while.
No, it's just Hollywood is the curse.
Yes.
I think that's probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about it. I'm really excited to watch more of it. Oh man, I'll say one more thing. I hope they stick with the story from the video games, because first episode of season 2. Man, that would be great, because that's the second time Pedro Pascal get his head smashed in on an HBO show. And just to see audience reaction to that would be interesting.
I think they might. Never mind. If they do it, or they will do a season 2, but I think it would be smarter of them to rearrange. I think it would be smarter to start off with Abby, her backstory first.
Okay.
And then end up to where she is with Joel and them.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Sure. What was I going to say?
Hollywood, give us a call. We'll write it for you.
No, I think Neil Druckmann's good. The other, sorry, I keep thinking of things. I apologize. I'll give it to you guys.
This is a podcast to talk about stuff.
The other thing I know Neil Druckmann probably didn't do this himself, and it was some marketing douchebag, but like the trailer for it says like the director of the acclaimed video. It's like, okay, like 1,000 people made Last of Us. Look, we've had this discussion.
Oh, right.
That bothers me a little bit. But again, that's standard, because it's like, from the executive producer of, and it lists like one movie. And it's like, okay, so that guy, this guy also made, 5 crappy movies. So what does it matter if he executive produced?
Yeah, someone did that to me because he was talking about Callisto Protocol, and he did like Callisto Protocol, but he pulled the guys who made Dead Space made Callisto Protocol. And I was like, no, like 2 guys did. It's not all of them. It's just.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's one thing that I'm sensitive toward, because it's like, and Neil Druckmann knows this, because we've had these conversations about, our Tor theory in video games and how silly it is.
Yeah, and he had no decision on that. That was.
I'm sure he wasn't like, I want my name in the trailer.
Yeah, no, that was 100% trying to cash in on the video game.
Right.
Even further.
That was to catch the gamers for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, Last of Us 2 is still the scariest game I've ever played. Not because it has like the scariest scenes or whatever, but because the hate that underlies the game is real hate, right? Neil Druckmann was inspired by certain things. I won't get into politics. He was not advocating hate, but there were certain things that he saw in the world that have to do with his political opinions, and he sort of wrote that anger into Last of Us, and I think that's why Last of Us is like one of the scariest games, because the hate is an analog for real hate in the actual world.
Yeah.
And the destruction is based on real destruction in the actual world, and that's sort of the terrifying thing. And it's not the only horror property to do that, obviously, but as a video game, it did a good job of having the zombies and having the crazy world and all that stuff, but underneath that was a very realistic depiction of human suffering and hate, and that's what made it so terrifying to me. So, like I said, things there is nothing humans can come up with that is scarier than the natural world. Truth is stranger than fiction, as the saying goes. Okay, sorry. I lent the floor to the honorable, esteemed colleagues from the other side of the table.
The other luminaries.
So what do you guys want to talk about? Go ahead, take it.
I played a little bit more of Hard Space Shipbreakers. I didn't get a lot in because it was a long week at work, so didn't get to do much gaming.
I did. So I was jumping around between a couple things. The first game I started up is a game I've been waiting to play since November, but I started playing Valkyrie Elysium, which is the Square Enix action RPG. And I started playing it, and I guess I didn't put two and two together because it's kind of based around the Valkyrie Profile series, which has been going on since the PS1 days, and that was kind of an action RPG. But I don't know why my brain didn't expect it to be another Norse mythology thing, which is fine. But it's just like Valkyries, and it's like, oh, I'm serving Odin. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And then they started throwing all the Norse terminology to me. And so I was kind of already like, I guess I don't want to say done with it, but I already had like kind of a trip up starting it again because I was like, oh, more Norse stuff. And it's not that I don't want to do Norse stuff, but I just did God of War.
Just inferior to God of War Ragnarok.
That might have been it too. But, I went through the tutorial, and one of the funny things was I like to look through the trophy list because it's like, oh, what am I going to do here? Like how long is it going to take me? And there was one that was like, I'll do a 300 hit combo. And I was like, oh man, I might have to do that a little later on in the game. We'll see what happens. It ended up being my first trophy. Ended up being my first trophy against the first boss in the game. But about an hour in, and I'm starting to have a lot of worry about it. I enjoy the combat of it. I think the combat is really cool. Standard hack and slash, square for light attacks, triangle for like harder attacks. You have a dodge maneuver, and you have this interesting kind of like not whip ability, but like kind of like a web sling. You like
Spider-Man.
Kind of you throw out like a essence of something, and then you can pull yourself towards a grapple. You have a grapple of some sort, and it reminds me of the sticky hands. But so like while you're doing a combo to somebody, if there's someone off in the distance, I can hit L2 and I can grapple to that person and pull myself towards them and continue the combo.
Oh, okay.
And I find it really neat because it kind of gives this feeling of just never-endingness, and I can just keep going. So you can also hold R2 and you get a pull-up menu of 4 different spells you can have, which I only have 3 right now, but you could choose spells through that way. And then you have R1, which if you pull up, I don't have any yet, but they give you some in the tutorial. What's the word for... It's a Norse mythology word, but it's like spirits. Ein. It starts with an
E.
Yeah, they've used it in Norse. They used it in God of War as well, but I can't. It's a longer word that starts with an E. I don't know if it's spirits.
Like Aesir? Is it a specific?
No.
Specific set of beings.
Yeah, so they're beings. They're like spirits of people that you can get. And like they gave me the spirit of a guy who had a great sword and a guy who had a bow and arrow. You can call them out along with you in battle. they'll just immediately go to whoever you target and they'll attack them as well, while I'm also attacking them. So the combination of performing these moves, sending out these summons,
and those all count towards your hit.
It all counts towards your hit. So that helped me in the boss battle, but I expected it to be, way later. It's very fulfilling, and I think it's something to keep me around. Everything else about it so far is pushing me away.
Oh no!
Because I've used this phrase before for certain games in a positive light. And particularly like Trials of Mana, I think like a year and a half ago, I played and I said it was the best PS2 game I've ever played, even though it came out on PS4 because of the style of it, the way that it was.
Sure.
Like it was just very good. This is a very bad PS2 game.
Oh no!
The areas that you're in are so empty and devoid of like any kind of personality. It's just very drab and standard village, mountain, field, and nothing is in it.
Oh, geez.
Nothing is in it except enemies every now and again. I get that Ragnarok just happened in that world, like in the world where you start, like Ragnarok just happened. And people are like running away from creatures that are still around and stuff like that. And I get that, but it's just it's soulless is what it is. So as I'm going through I still haven't beaten chapter 1. As I'm going through chapter 1, I'm figuring out, I need to start doing side quests and stuff. This is great. So let me pull up my map and see what I have to do. The map is this long, so far that I found, is this long kind of like L shape going north, and I'm just following it. Every now and again, there's a little branch. And they end very soon. So I have to go in there, get whatever's there, then come back out, and then go on the main road, then go.
Okay.
So it's like you're giving me an illusion of like some sort of open world, but it's just useless is what it is, because it's
weird.
Because nothing's there. Like you're purposefully trying to fill something that you didn't have any ideas for, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You have to open chests and inspect everything with L2. Which is weird. It's very weird. Instead of like pressing square or X to like pick up something, or you got to press L2, and that's weird. There's a filter. The art style of it has very dark lines across all characters and everything else. So kind of like a comic booky, not cel shaded, but it gives a pop to everything. I worry that they did that because they couldn't create good enough graphics. So they use it to like mask
Interesting.
how bad character models look and how bad everything else looks, because it doesn't look that good. It's PS4, PS5 game, and I'm playing it and I honestly like kind of like, this is a very early PS4 game, if anything.
Wow. Okay.
Like I constantly have to break boxes or break barrels that are just sitting around things I need to level up. And those are the only things that are in environments besides enemies here and there. I've tried a couple times already, and I think about almost 3 hours into it, and nothing has, besides the combat, has appeared to make me want to play it any longer. And I might drop it if it doesn't get any better after the first chapter. And that's Valkyrie Elysium, so that's kind of disappointing.
Jeez. Okay.
And then I started up Sonic Frontiers. Picked that one up. Sonic Frontiers, I've only played about an hour of, but I think it's a little jarring. It's a little whiplashy, because you do have, once again, like this is supposed to be like an open world Sonic game. And it is open world for the most part. But once again, it's also kind of empty. Just kind of like fields so far, which is fine because it gives Sonic ways to like run around in, and every now and again, these machines will like pop up and you use combos and abilities to defeat them. And then you have to unlock pillars that I believe unlock more of the levels. But those pillars, those are the stages that normally Sonic games would have. So you're out in the open world kind of running around and doing random stuff. I haven't really encountered anything that I need to do in the open worlds. It's just collect rings, grind on these cool things and
I haven't
collect these items.
I haven't played Sonic Frontiers, but I have seen footage, and it definitely seems like it's a clash of art styles.
Yeah.
Because the environment all looks photorealistic, but everything else is cartoony.
Yes.
And I haven't played it. I've only seen footage, but it just does not look like it fits. It feels like it clashes more than it's like this stylistic fit, you know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense, because that's kind of correct. In motion, the game itself, it looks good. The environments look good, and Sonic does look good. In the opening cutscene, at least, I did feel like the CG was subpar. Sonic, Tails, Amy, they all had that plastic look. There was no definition in like the hairs, because like Sonic, obviously they're animals, they still have hairs stuff, but I didn't see any details of that. It was just kind of straight and flat, which I found very jarring, weird. But yeah, you unlock these pillars, and these pillars take you to cyberspace. Cyberspace are the actual Sonic levels that you would play in, that are very fast.
Oh, okay.
So the trailers, they don't make it seem like everything is connected, but you know, I'm going around the open world right now and wondering like, oh, I'm not going to be doing these levels in this open world. I have to go to the separate hub world to do these levels. So that's why I say it's like a little jarring whiplashy, because I get this open world thing, which is do those levels that like I think is very cool of Sonic. It's the thing that's off to the side. And then there's lots of platforms and stuff, of course, as Sonic is to do, and it's still, you encountered this in, you know, our video we did, but he still controls terribly for platforming. So I have a lot of like situations to where I need to jump again to the next area, but either the platform's perspective is weird even when the camera's turned, or like I'll hit something or not jump high enough and didn't double jump, or didn't do what I need to get to the next point, and it's like, oh shit, okay, and I have to do it again. Now I know what to do. Like I don't get it the first time, and it's like, now I know what to do. So it's very, very weird. But I'm itching to, you know, play something new. So Sonic Frontiers is kind of the thing right now that I'll probably continue to play, and I'm gonna give one more shot to Valkyrie Elysium, and I hope that like kind of hope that fixes itself.
I gotta say, your review of it did not sound appetizing.
No,
I gotta say,
but you know, that's the way it goes sometimes, man. Like with some games, like sometimes you pick bad ones.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're ready to hit the ad.
Yep.
Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10, and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server.
Callisto Protocol devs have been left off of the credits. This story comes from GameIndustry.biz, and they spoke with 5 former Striking Distance Studios employees. Of course, Striking Distance Studios was founded by Glenn Schofield. They say around 20 employees, including them, were left off the credits. Sources also describe a culture of crunch as management wanted to go beyond AAA to a quad A game. What does that mean? And that the studio would pay lip service to self-care but wouldn't actually make accommodations for it. One source says, quote, I think the Sledgehammer guys like loyalty, and they can be punitive if they detect a lack of it. The credit submission felt like an obvious FU to those who were left out. Somebody wanted to send a message, and the message was, next time have a bit more loyalty to us. Another source said, I actually had a great time working there, and I felt I had a great relationship with everyone on the team, up to the C staff and Glenn. I don't have anything bad to say about Glenn. The only time there was some friction was on exit, and I think devs who left were punished with credit omissions, end quote.
There was a lot of interesting stuff. Callisto Protocol is a weird case because the publisher is, Krafton, who is publishing PUBG.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure if Tencent doesn't own them, Tencent owns a huge portion of them. They do,
yes.
Yeah. So this, as far as I can tell, Krafton also published another game, Thunder Tier 1, which is this like small special forces like military simulator game, top down. It's actually pretty good. I've played it. It's pretty decent. It's only like $20. It's not a very long game or very big game, but it's kind of like imagine Helldivers, but like Milsim. A little bit more Milsim-y.
Oh, wow,
I like it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it. Actually, one thing that's cool in the game is how it messes with line of sight, because you can. Sorry, real quick. It's called Thunder Tier 1. And there's this really cool thing it does with line of sight, where say you are on one side of a street behind a car, and I am on one side of a street behind a separate car, and say down the street from me, there's a car with an enemy behind it, right? Well, I can't see that person because I am behind a car and they are behind a car. But because you are across the street, you can kind of see behind that car, so you can see the bad guy. Yeah. So on my screen, it will show me like a little red ghost showing me your line of sight, but I don't actually see where it's moving. I just see sort of it's where it could what be. The game is communicating is like you telling me, hey, there's a guy behind that car. Right, exactly. So I kind of know the approximate location, but I actually don't. Well, on your screen, you actually know specifically where the guy is.
Interesting.
That's I think it's a really cool little thing, a line of sight thing. Anyway, back to the point. So Callisto Protocol is the first game from this publisher that I don't know if it's been around for that long. That is like a single player, not super microtransaction friendly title. Mm-hmm. And it's released to middling reviews. Yeah. Some people love it. A lot of people didn't. Right. And it has this thing and it has the crunch thing, because Glenn Schofield talked about, he sent out a tweet about working hard. I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing here, but it alluded to like crunch and stuff. A lot of people didn't like it. He took the tweet down. Yeah. So, there's just been a lot of like mini controversies surrounding the game. And this is weird because I don't know what goes into like who should be in a video game credits. I don't know. That's a good question. Mark Dara has made a video about that. But at the same time, is it unreasonable to say if you work on the game, put your name there? Put it in credits. Jim Ryan's name is in the credits for God of War Ragnarok. He didn't do shit for God of War Ragnarok. Yeah. So it's like, if...
Oh, man. Sorry, I have an example.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. So, I mean, if you do a month's worth of work as a contractor, why not? Yeah. Because there are PR executives who work in offices that don't have a single video game inside of them, and they get their name in the credits. Yeah, so it's like, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. So on Nintendo Power magazines and on certain strategy guides for games, specifically Super Smash Bros. Melee for the GameCube, and when you look at the credits, the publisher is credited to Minoru Arakawa, who was the Nintendo president at the time. And I just find it weird because he didn't publish the goddamn thing. Like right? he was the guy who's like, yeah, sure, you can make this, but he didn't publish it. So it's just it's funny, like because you said Jim Ryan's name on it, the Minoru Arakawa's name is on that. That's like the third time I did that today. But yeah, no, people give us $2 and we still find a way to put their name on the thing. So it's like put their name on the credits. Yeah, and it's not hard.
And so again, I'm speaking out of my depth here because I don't know. Like Mark Dara may say, "Well, Tyler," and he may have a decent argument. I don't know, but I just feel like video game credits are as long as a goddamn Star Trek episode. There's a bajillion names there.
Sure.
Just at what's 20 more names, right? And when you don't do that, it either kind of feels sloppy or it feels like retaliation. And that's just a shitty thing, especially when you're somebody who has broken, like Glenn Schofield, who got out of Sledgehammer and was just churning out Call of Duties and is famous for Dead Space and came and tried to do, and maybe some people say they failed, maybe whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is, try to do something that they're passionate about, that they really want. Body horror, space horror, science fiction horror, that kind of thing. Sure. And it sucks to see those same kind of like industry issues replicated in a context that is supposedly breaking away from that, right? So that's disappointing. Yeah, and the other thing is the quad A game. Like, should we just stop with all this?
If your game is a quad A game, then it better be like a global phenomenon of some sort. Like higher than Fortnite and
when you think triple A, I think it's just budgetary.
Yeah, right.
Like, I remember when I got God of War Ragnarok, my mom was with me, and she was like, and she didn't understand. She doesn't understand like what AAA. So I said, so I explained to her, like, when people say AAA, what I understand it is like, this is the most that money can buy. It's kind of like when
it's
Disney
a blockbuster
makes a Marvel movie.
Yeah, it's a blockbuster movie.
It's like they have a gigantic budget. It's big on the company's quarterly reports and annual sheet and shit like that. That's what a AAA release is supposed to be, right?
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily like capability or even quality. It's just budget and what's at stake, kind of. At least that in my mind, right?
Yes.
So when you're talking about Quad A, it's like a bigger budget.
Yeah.
Like what? Or is it supposed to be a game that, or is the argument that it's like so innovative that it's like groundbreaking or something like that? Is that, I don't know. I just don't like the phrase. It comes off, AAA is already sort of an annoying phrase. Quad A just comes off a little like even more somewhat obnoxious. And I'm not a fan.
No, I'm not a fan of that either. It's pretentious as well as what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Do we have anything else we want to say about this?
I just want to say that if you are going to be a self-proclaimed Quad A game, your game should work on release and shouldn't need a day one patch.
That's another good point. Yeah,
you should be on top of that stuff. Not release the wrong version.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point. And I hope this isn't the other thing that sucks about the Callisto Protocol, because I assume it probably didn't perform that well with the way that its reviews came out and the performance issues, is you'll see assholes, like moron executives, point to it and go, "Oh, that's what happens when you make a game that doesn't have a monetization tail," and they'll sweep like Ragnarok under the rug.
Yeah.
And because it's obviously a bad faith argument and why this kind of stuff it can't succeed when it obviously can succeed. It just wasn't a good product, or at least a successful product. I haven't played it, so I'm not going to say whether or not it's good. Anyway, moving on. Trouble at the Proletariat Union. So Proletariat, I think we talked about this last week, is an Activision-Blizzard studio from Boston. They recently voted to unionize. Axio reports that the unionization effort at the studio is becoming tense, with one worker saying they've become disillusioned by the way their colleagues have sought to organize them. The source said, quote, "This is all being pushed faster than we're able to process what it actually means for our jobs, who it applies to, what the benefits are versus the risk," end quote. I'm going to read straight from the Axio story, which I believe was by Stephen Totillo. Quote, "The worker says that even though colleagues have been discussing possible unionization since the fall, they had not signed a union card and were caught off guard by the December 27th public statement from Proletariat, from a Proletariat work group and the Communications Workers of America about forming a union. One concern, pro-worker concessions won by Proletariat leaders when they sold the studio to Blizzard last summer could be back on the table during contract negotiations. Axio said the worker that spoke with them described themselves as politically pro-union, and they are wary of Activision Blizzard management, but that communication needed to be improved in order to better sell a union's potential benefits to them and other skeptics on staff."
Okay. What I'm gathering from the story is that Proletariat higher-ups were like, "We're forming a union." Like, gonna say yes. And they voted a yes for it, but people who voted yes didn't know what they were getting.
It seems
Basically.
like they kind of took off and ran with it, and things weren't communicated.
Right. Okay.
Which the death of irony here being that the studio is called Proletariat.
Right. So I'm sorry. What I guess the suspicion that I have is the ones who are running the union, like to unionize the Proletariat, are like probably making a worse deal to Activision Blizzard for their employees.
And that's what the story indicates, because stuff that they had settled is now back on the table.
Got it.
I don't want to say concessions, because I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but things that were seemingly set are now all of a sudden back on the table, open for negotiation, when previously they weren't.
Got it.
And I think this is these are legitimate concerns. Especially because on one side you have Activision Blizzard, a horrible company that's doing everything they can to screw their workers over. And then on the other side, you have disparate groups of workers trying to figure out how to make the industry better. But they're led by humans, and humans are fallible, and they're not going to do everything correctly.
Yeah.
And I remember when we talked to Mark Dara about this, Mark Dara wasn't anti-union, but this was something that he sort of premonitioned. That's not a word. Predicted. Yeah, we'll say predict. No, not predicted, but like he was wary of.
Yeah.
Because he understands that these things are more complex, and he's like, how do you organize the unions? What do you do about this, and that? I can't speak for him. I don't want to call him necessarily a skeptic, but I to paraphrase his opinion was unions may not be a great solution, but they're the best solution that we have, kind of a thing, which I thought that was fair. And I think these kind of things are what worried him and worried other people. So I think it's all legitimate concerns. And a lot of the story was vague. They didn't get into the nitty-gritty details, so we don't know exactly. But yeah, I totally understand that. And it's disappointing because Activision-Blizzard would consider this a win because they don't give a shit about making it better for their employees. They just consider consolidating power. That is their goal. So if you want the games industry to be better, you should want these fights to be won by the workers and the unions and stuff like that. But you got to hope that it's organized correctly, because poor organization, running headlong into stuff, whatever, that could just lead to a bad union or a bad union contract or whatever, which is like a Band-Aid with a hole in it or something like that. Like not a solution at all. Do you guys,
one point that stands out on this, and I really wish Axios either dove deeper into it when they were interviewing people, or if they had that information, put it in there. It was the part about earlier this week, Proletariat management declined to recognize the union and instead pushed for autonomous workers to vote instead by National Labor Relations Board. Then in small parentheses, management also believes only 48 workers are available or eligible to unionize. So I want to know more about that last part, because is that Proletariat management saying only 48 are eligible to unionize, or is that Activision-Blizzard management saying that? Because
well, yeah, I mean, you would see if Axios wrote it as Proletariat management, then that I assume that means Proletariat management, not like a
yeah. No, I'm getting that, but then just above that, the Proletariat said that a supermajority of some 57 workers wanted a union. Why did they ask? That
was in December.
Yeah, why'd they ask 57 if only 48 were available or eligible to unionize?
Yeah, it's weird. And we're not lawyers.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to, and I don't know.
Which is why I wanted more information on that.
Yeah. And Axios doesn't do a whole lot of deep dives. They do a lot of like quick bullet points and stuff like that. But that's I think that's interesting. Okay. We will.
Also, if, just for this part, anything Activision Blizzard says about, unionization and everything, take with a massive grain of salt.
No, they're
take like it with a shot of penicillin.
They're cartoon villains at this point. Yeah. Squanch Games, the developers of High on Life, were sued for sexual harassment back in 2018. I'm taking all this from Kotaku, who reviewed court documents, and I believe was the first to report on it. I don't know. Also happening, which is relevant, Justin Roiland, Squanch Games founder, writer famous for like one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty, is facing felony domestic violence charges. He was not named in the suit, but the suit came to life when Roiland's allegations also and that was first reported by NBC News. The suit was filed on behalf of Sarah Dukakis, a former designer who alleged she faced belittlement and sexual harassment from former technical director Jeff Dixon. Despite numerous complaints, the behavior was never addressed. I'm going to read straight from the complaint. Quote, on August 11th, 2017, plaintiff spoke to Tanya Watson, who is the co-founder and then CEO of Squanch Games, and expressed her issues with Mr. Dixon, including the unwanted touching and how Dixon would treat plaintiff differently because she was female. In response, Watson told plaintiff That's just how this generation of guys are. The instructed plaintiff instructed plaintiff to sit quietly, take notes, and smile whenever the males, including Dixon, were speaking. Dukakis was fired for performance issues, but the complaint alleges it was in retaliation for her complaints. Squanch Games denied all allegations, and the case was settled with undisclosed terms back in 2019. I didn't know if we had any thoughts on this, but I wanted to just bring it up because I thought that was that was sort of a big story. And this was happening in 2018. Mm-hmm. So if it had been reported on back then, I think it's a big deal now. I think it would have been a bigger deal because, I don't know.
You're right. Oh.
Because when did the Ubisoft stuff go down? Was that summer 2019? Was it
the Ubisoft Activision stuff?
Or, yeah, when the stuff about Ubisoft came out. That was summer.
It's, the last 5 years.
Yeah, no, you're right. But the point I'm trying to get to here is that was in the middle of because you had the Ubisoft stuff, you had the Smash scene stuff. Remember all that?
Yeah.
And then you had Activision-Blizzard stuff. So you had a bunch of stories about workplace culture, and that happened right before it or in the middle of it, but it wasn't. It was missed.
Yeah.
So the conversation may have been a bit different, may have been bigger had it been reported on back then. I don't know if you guys have...
Sorry, the Ubisoft stuff came to light in 2020.
Okay, 2020, yeah. I don't know if you guys have followed Justin Roiland or whatever.
Not really.
But there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no,
and I'm not going to talk about it.
I follow it to the point where when the news broke, it was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen some of his work earlier than, Rick and Morty, and man, that stuff is wild. So, yes. Yeah. And then apparently there was even
it hits differently.
Yeah, and then
hits differently.
There's a paragraph on, I think, one of his website or
I don't know.
Rick
I don't want to speak
website.
To anything.
Yeah, that was taken out recently, but you can still find it in the Internet Archives.
Oh, like the Wayback Machine?
The Wayback Machine, yeah. And you can see that paragraph, and apparently it's just like, oof.
Okay.
Anyways, but yeah.
Yep. Richard.
NVIDIA and Google have both expressed concerns about the Microsoft Activision merger. Reported by Bloomberg, according to people familiar with the matter, Google and NVIDIA provided information that backs the FTC's argument that the Microsoft Activision, I like to call them that, merger would give Microsoft an unfair advantage for cloud subscription and mobile gaming. NVIDIA specifically stressed the need for equal and open access to games, but didn't directly oppose the acquisition. Sources also said Microsoft offered Sony a 10-year deal to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. Of course, we knew that already. But the deal also included the right for Sony to put Call of Duty on its own subscription services.
Which I don't know. I didn't know if we knew that or not.
I don't think we knew.
I don't remember that.
That might have been a quick blurb.
There's been a bunch of stuff. There's stuff every week that comes out about this deal. So it 100% possible we could have missed it. I do like NVIDIA playing Mac. I played both sides, so I always come out on top.
Yeah. No, for sure. Because they have a dog in this fight with GeForce Now.
Yeah, they kind of have a dog in the fight.
I hear it works very well. So that's
they have I don't know. They have a chicken in the fight.
Sure.
They have something that's somewhat related.
If you got a Quest and want to play VR games, it's a great way to do it.
They have a fox in the fight. I don't know. I'm trying to think of animals that aren't directly related, whatever.
I think Google needs to play this carefully because the Google Play Store can be seen as a monopoly.
Well, yeah, they're being sued by there's a lawsuit with them in Epic right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which that's the thing about these companies.
That's just Google bringing a broken bottle to a gunfight.
These companies all do the Mac thing and play both sides because if it's beneficial to them,
it's business politics.
Then it's if it's beneficial to them, then it's we're the third. Microsoft, we're the third. Poor us, we're the third in market share. But if it's not beneficial to them, we're gonna all die.
We're making $3 billion instead of $5 billion.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the old adage about a dirty football player. It's like if the football player is on my team, he's aggressive. He's an aggressive player, plays to the edge of the whistle. If he's on the other team, he's a dirty piece of shit. That's So with this thing, I think it's kind of similar because I don't believe any of these companies actually believe some of the stuff they said.
Yeah.
Also, Google just needs to stop trying to get in on the video game industry because they just can't do it.
Yeah. And it would be interesting to see if you could twist some of their arguments back on them.
Because no, here. I mean, it's right here. Unfair advantage for cloud and subscription and mobile gaming against who?
Right.
Google against your monopoly. Unfair advantage against your monopoly.
Yeah, we don't know what specifically they said, but yes, it is kind of awkward because it's like
yeah. Well, they can't make money off of Microsoft's streaming service, which you get for free on the Google Play Store.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure if you could play all the video games you want through them, they would want a cut of that.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. And it's all about that consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily about a more egalitarian market. It's about how do we get in on the action,
yes,
or whatever,
always is.
while keeping the ecosystem that we created, sustainable and working the way we want to work it. And that's what Epic is trying to disrupt with their lawsuits with Apple and with Google. I still haven't heard like a great argument from Microsoft.
Yeah.
And I still kind of hope that the FTC wins this one out. Again, not because I like necessarily believe in the FTC or anything like that. I'm just not a huge fan of mergers and consolidation. I just don't necessarily think it's a good thing. And I do not believe, does Phil Spencer, when Phil Spencer says, I really believe in people playing games wherever they want. Does Phil Spencer legitimately believe that? I'll buy that. Does every other executive at Xbox or Microsoft?
Probably
no.
not.
I don't believe that for a second. So, all it takes is a couple people to decide differently, and all of a sudden, the OGL for D&D is different. That's all it takes is for one executive, some, jabroni is the word I like to use, to decide to do something differently. And all of a sudden you have a huge controversy on your hand, and you have market consolidation, and you have greedy bullshit. So yeah, I don't.
One thing that I don't understand.
The concessions that they're making, I just don't buy.
I don't understand why Microsoft said they offered a 10-year deal to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. It should have been a longer deal because you have nothing to gain by taking it away from PlayStation. You have everything to gain from making money off of PlayStation.
See that, and that's the thing that doesn't make sense. Is I think intuitively you're correct, but the video game industry is not a industry that thinks in the long term, right? They are an industry that thinks like, what will benefit us the most in the next 30 seconds? It's an industry full of goldfishes with suits on. And that's a decision that is that is looking into the future, is considering things like install base. But that's not how the industry operates. The industry isn't about long-term sustainability and growth. It's short-term gobbling up everything and, blowing up like a supernova.
And I just find it hard to believe that no one in any meeting has ever said this.
Oh, I'm sure they have, but that's the thing. They have.
Yeah.
They just don't care.
But I don't know.
That's the thing about being an executive. You make bad arguments. Your arguments are bad. You don't have any integrity. You somehow still, you hold yourself with dignity somehow. But that's just your job. And then it's Don Matrick. We have a system for that. It's called the Xbox 360. You can utter things like that, and then you can toss a hand grenade and blow up the Xbox One and go to Zynga.
Oh man!
You can do things like that because that's Frank Gabot. When single player games. No, he didn't say they weren't going to work. He said something else. You can toss a hand grenade, blow up EA, and you can go to some other fucking company and screw that company
but it's
up.
So mind-boggling that no one's been able to break through the CEO's head. Like, hey, we can make X amount of money by having it only on Microsoft systems, but we can make X to the power of X by having it on every system.
Yeah.
It's not about the money; it's about a shitload of money you can make.
I'm sure
by leaving it alone.
I'm sure they didn't complain when the MLB stepped in and was like, "Sony, we need you to put your baseball game on all the consoles." Because Microsoft makes a cut of that, and so does Switch. And Nintendo doesn't care, but I'm sure they didn't mind the extra, money for MLB the Show on their console.
No, Japan loves baseball.
No, they do. Yeah, they do.
Do you think would you find it unbelievable if there were people at Sony that would have rather kept it a Sony product?
Oh, they wanted to. They wanted to.
No. I believe 100%.
They were forced to by the MLB, though. But
two different sides of the spectrum. It was on Sony consoles and just on Sony consoles.
Yeah.
This one's on everything right now.
And they're gonna reverse the situation. Is what I think is totally within the realm of believability for them to do.
Sure.
But what I'm arguing, and I think what you guys would agree, is the short-sightedness of the industry. Is what I would place my bets on. So I would place my bet because we've talked about this. It makes no sense that Elder Scrolls 6 would be an Xbox exclusive. Because the install base for consoles right now, PlayStation is winning. So if you are Xbox and you limit yourself to just Xbox and PC, you're going to be making a shitload of money with Elder Scrolls 6. But there's a whole nother piece of the pie out there that you could have a chunk of if you released it, right? But by not doing that, you're limiting yourself. So it only makes sense to release it there.
Just need to go.
But I totally think Microsoft would 1,000% consider taking the gamble that you'll make more money somehow not selling it for every console than you would selling it for in only your ecosystem.
I just need to go into the next executive meeting and just play the scene from There Will Be Blood. I drink your milkshake. That's the situation you have right now at Microsoft. You're going to be drinking out of Sony's milkshake, and there's nothing they can do about it.
And the problem is they want the only milkshake machine in town. That's what they want.
Well, that's not going to happen.
It's not.
Well, and there's...
You're not going to run Sony out of business by taking away Call of Duty. I'm sorry.
Right, you aren't. Yeah, because there are, it's not a big amount, but there are people who don't like brands and they won't get those purchases no matter what.
Sure.
I mean, it's not going to hurt them, sure, but they want those purchases regardless.
Yeah. Do you ever think any of these companies will take on Valve? Why hasn't that happened? I guess it kind of did. But it was half-assed. Right? Like if Microsoft really wanted to, they could really take on Valve. Right? Maybe the PC market just isn't big enough for them to really care. I don't know.
Valve is a storefront, though.
Yeah.
It's not something.
It's a digital console.
It's far less of a developer in console console air quotes than it used to be. It's primarily just a storefront now.
But I know, but don't you not want to have to pay that
Steam
30%?
Valve and Steam relies on Microsoft, not the other way around.
You think? Well, yeah, because it's on PC.
Because already Valve wouldn't exist without Microsoft.
Yeah, but if you're Microsoft, why not just get rid of... You're Microsoft, you own the platform. There's a middleman there. Why not just force your hand and get rid of the middleman one day? Because we own the OS. Why are we letting these guys make money off of our OS kind of thing?
It's a free market.
I'm not saying I like that idea. I'm just saying the industry is cutthroat. Why don't they do more? And I'm sure there's reasons behind that.
Because Valve would go to Linux, and then Linux would overtake Microsoft.
Because all gamers would.
Because Gabe loves Linux, man.
So it's like a Mexican standoff where Microsoft's holding a gun that says Microsoft storefront, and freaking Steam's call an ambulance, not for me, Linux gun.
Well, I mean, Microsoft kind of did start to eliminate the necessity to rely on Steam with the Game Pass launcher and everything.
Yeah, Microsoft also has tried so many times against other places.
There's also games for Windows
failed.
Live.
Yeah, right. No, right. That's the example I was going for. Game for Windows Live, and then when they wanted to compete against iPod, they did the Zune, which was a great product, but didn't do anything well. When they wanted to compete against Samsung and iPhone, they did the Windows Phone, which was also very cool, but didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So they've tried. they are not hardware makers. Microsoft is not hardware makers. They are software makers.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Are we ready for tidbits?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Okay. All right. A man discusses the news, but not like the big news, the little news. Little bit. This is the tidbits.
Should we get rid of that reference now because it's Justin Roiland?
Oh shit! I didn't even think about that. All right. Well, we'll think about it.
All right. Well, anyways, a games archivist has dumped over 10 gigabytes of video game information onto the internet. Hooray. Hooray for archivists.
Hell yeah. What a fucking badass.
VG Densetsu is an avid games archivist who for over a decade now has collected insane amounts of information, over 11 gigs worth. All of the data and information has been collected from many, many different sources. VG Densetsu elaborates, quote, the vast majority of these documents, screenshots, and photos are not from me. The article scans, for example, come from sites, communities, or individuals such as Abandonware Magazines, Gaming Alexandria, Retro Mags, Retro CDN. Japanese magazine scans as well from countless sites, forums, and Twitter accounts such as N64, Lost Levels, Assembler Games, Nintendo Ages, Atari Age. I use them a lot at my store. Academy 83, etc. The entirety of the archive can be downloaded from archive.org. And obviously with how large the file is, it's going to take a while to parse through and see what's in there. Because
well, you said it was 11 gigs?
11 gigs, yeah.
But that 11 gigs holds a ton of tiny things.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So 11 gigs is relatively small, but it's
right. So a lot of it is
tiny pieces of data.
Yes, yeah. So some users have already done some of the work. We have some info on what's been found. So images of canceled Streets of Rage remake, which was we knew about already, but only a few images have been seen before this. Like we got more images of that. Images of Half-Life Episode 3 or Half-Life 2 Episode 3, when they were working on it and whatnot, was also featured in the dump, or at least what it was. But beyond that, it's going to be neat seeing what they find.
If there's a lot of screenshots in that 11 gigs, that's a shit ton of screenshots.
Yeah, it is.
Those are
for
a couple kilobytes a pop. Yeah.
Pages, design documents, all stuff like that. So it's if we find anything else, we'll let you know. That info came from some of it from exputer.com, and then I went to VG Densetsu's Twitter page and saw all that as well. I forgot to talk about this last week, but NetEase has acquired Skybox Labs. Skybox Labs is a Canadian studio and has helped develop Halo Infinite, Minecraft, and Fallout 76. They've been acquired by a Chinese company. Skybox will still operate independently within NetEase Games under the leadership of its three co-founders, Shang Kong, Derek McNeil, and Steven Sylvester. Shang had this to say, quote, "We have built a team of talented individuals who are passionate and creative, and by joining NetEase Games, we will also be able to accelerate our plans to pursue new creative opportunities and enjoy access to world-class operational resources and the full breadth and depth of NetEase's services so we can scale faster in Canada," said Skybox founder Kong. That's it. That's all I got.
Alrighty.
Except for a quick segue about Xbox. So, because you said Dynametric, and then you mentioned Xbox, and I forgot to talk about this during my what games I was playing. But I was like, you know what? I still to this day have not played Gears 4 or 5.
Okay.
And I played all the other Gears of War games, and I love them. I think they're great games. But I hear 4 and 5 are great. And so I went to Game Pass, and I was like, well, let me download Gears 4, and I saw that it was over 100 gigabytes.
Yep.
And I was like, no, I'm not gonna download that because I don't want to use my internet, my bandwidth. I was like, I'll just grab the disc or whatever. So I went to go grab the disc and I threw it in, and it's like, you need to update this game. That's gonna be 80 gigs. I was like, what's the fucking point, man? Like, because I think it still carried over to the Series consoles.
Yeah.
But Xbox still. So Xbox One, Xbox Series consoles, you can't play the game without updating it. Like, you need to update it first. Whereas like PlayStation, it's like, hey, do you want to play this without updating it? It's like, yes, please, thank you.
Sure.
And you can just go past it. But yeah, and so they don't have I don't think they have a good compression system, because every time there's a new update for Call of Duty, like everybody groans because the update is like always over 100 gigs, because that 100 gigs is replacing all the other 100 gigs instead of just taking the essential information and putting it in like PlayStation
This has been a thing for
does.
a while.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there like, God damn it. Anyway, I did it and I haven't started it yet, but I'm just, it's 80 gigs. Jesus Christ.
Take your Xbox to like a Starbucks as soon as it opens.
Oh yeah,
Hook it up
for
to
sure.
a small TV.
For sure, yeah.
sit at that Starbucks the rest of the day, because I'm sure the Wi-Fi is great.
So there were a couple people I used to follow. I weren't like friends with them really, but they were here in Arizona. But when the Wii U came out, one of them thought they were so fucking cool, and they went to a goddamn Starbucks with their Wii U because you could play it on the thing, and I'm just sitting here playing, and they thought they were the coolest motherfucker. And I was like, you're a goddamn idiot. You look like a fool. Like, a Switch with a Switch now because it's smaller is great, but it's like, I'm gonna take my whole ass console with my get out of here. But those make for funny images, though, with guys with PCs, like at Starbucks.
Definitely.
Anyways.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. New video soon. Patreon.com/Gaming Discourse. $2, $4, $7, $10. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.